What's up, guys? So I'm back out here today messing around with the little low layer Fatbelly drop point thing. We did I don't really like the etch on it. I did a little bit of hand setting on it. I got a couple little spots here and there from it laying around where I've touched it, but I don't really like the pattern. It's got like 6 layers you can see on it or stuff like that or whatever. So I'm gonna keep messing with the etch on that, and then we're gonna move on to some handle work, and I don't know, I might even grind on the bevel some more, thin the knife out, see if we can expose some more layers. I don't know. You'll know what I'm about to do because I'm about to show you. Okay, so what I decided to do, I just cleaned some of this stuff off. I had a weird little thick spot right here, which wasn't, nothing major. Just kind of nitpicking at this point. So what I'm about to do is start working on, I do a little pocket under here for epoxy and stuff like that or whatever. I'm gonna go with a resin scales, epoxy resin or whatever they call them. Some people say composite, but got a pretty cool little pattern done up on these. I think it'll go well with this. So we're gonna get that ready for handle fit up, and then once the epoxy's on there, or the resin scales, any little cleaning up I do in here or after grinding and stuff like that, you can etch the entire knife and it won't affect it whatsoever unless you leave it for a really, really long time. It'll kind of eat away at the edges and stuff like that where the epoxy and steel meet. But little 2-3 minute etches here and there and scuffing with 1500 grit just to get your pattern back on the spine is not going to bother them. So that's kind of useful with those kind of scales. So that's what we're gonna do. The reason I do that without a vise is this belt is so worn out in this drill press that wood will stop it. Don't do that. If your drill bit catches that knife and spins it, well, use your imagination. All right, so I've never really went into detail on this before. So how I lay my scales out on my knives, most of my scales come, if not exact, close enough for government work, and what I do is I have me some dummy pins back here. I use them every now and then after they get worn out, but I just put my handle anywhere in the graphic or grain or whatever I want, my actual handle to look like, kind of line it up. I drill my first pin, pop a pin in it, then from there make sure the butt of your knife or the wherever the second hole or third hole is going to be, and put pins as you go, and usually it lines up pretty good as long as your table and your chuck are square. They will go. Now if your table here is loose, like if you loosen it to where you can swivel it, it does have some play in it. So keep that in mind. When you're drilling these, if you drill in, your drill bit is gonna go at an angle, and when you put this scale over here, your angles are not gonna line up. That's a really simple way to put something that took me a long, long time to figure out, and a few people that I've spoke to have been through the same issues before. So if you're having that issue, or if you do something like this and that's been a problem for you, that's probably what happened. So I don't know if this is exactly square. I tighten it and it seems to work. So I'm gonna do this. Put your scales and your knife together. See, that's what I was talking about. They get worn out. Sometimes you've got to mush them to get them out, and they kind of deform on the end. So you end up having a scale that, or a pin, my dummy pins. But after they get like that, I just trim them off on the belt over there and use them on a knife. And I'll just cut me some more. But this is nice for just dry fitting. I do a lot of dry fit ups. happens. Found it first try. But we're gonna get this thing traced out. I'm gonna figure out where I want my handle to terminate, and we will get on the grinder. All right, we got it glued up, clamped down, got the epoxy and everything cleaned up off of the squeeze out and stuff. Gonna let that sit. I usually let it sit overnight, 12 hours, something like that or whatever. You can work it after a couple of hours, but there's no sense in rushing it. We're worrying about, you know, messing it up. So all right, so we're off the grinder. Got it rough profiled. I'm gonna go with like some 50 or 150 rough grit to kind of clean up the finger choils and stuff like that. I don't really like to go very, very close to the finished edges of my tang, especially down here, because you don't want to make your material super, super thin up against your steel, and a belt grinder will do it extremely fast. So I get it close, and then I go to some pretty rough sandpaper and finish it up. But I'm not going to film the hand sanding process because it's basically I'm going to go down to a really rough grit, and I'm going to wet sand the entire handle of the knife, spine, fitting, and pins and stuff like that. And I'm going to progressively go all the way up to about a 400 grit, and then I'm going to skip to about an 800 grit because this material finishes really well. About 800, and then I'm going to buff it. So I've got it hand sanded up to a relatively clean, like 400-ish. It's like a 320, and then I've kind of scuffed it with a 400, and it's pretty much there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna acetone the entire knife down. I'm gonna do some test etching and start to kind of get the spine and around the tang area of the knife etched to about the same depth that I have the blade. That way everything will be relatively even. So that's just how I like to do it. So there we go. I'm gonna put it in my tank. It's in the shed in there. I have a little tank here, but that acid's old and it's not really giving me the finish I want. So I don't have a way to film in there. I'm gonna tie this up, drop it in some acid, and do 3 or 4 minute cycles depending on how the acid is doing. I may go longer and scuff it off in between and keep doing it until I get the desired depth of the darker layers I want, and then clean it up, buff the handle, and done. All right, so we're out of the acid. We'll call it quits on this one here. Got a pretty cool pattern there, but basically I need some more acid. That acid's really old. It's like a year old or some change or something like that or whatever, and it was pretty diluted to begin with, so I'm not really getting the etch I want. I'll probably coffee etch it later on. But yeah, I'm gonna call it there. Appreciate y'all for hanging out. If you're not subscribed already, you're gonna miss out. So subscribe. Don't be weird.